Welcome back to Mustard Seed Ministries. Today's message is called God's Knowledge versus Man's Knowledge. When John chapter 1 spoke about the beginning was the Word and the Word was God, this was God establishing Jesus as the author of knowledge that comes from God. He also said in Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And where did knowledge and wisdom begin? They began in Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, where it says that God created the tree of knowledge, and he created it in the pleasantness of his sight. So God has the knowledge about this life because he created it. I'm telling y'all, how do you really know your own way when man's goings is of the Lord? When you are seeking knowledge, you must know it comes from God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. That's who it comes from. Jesus walked this earth as man did, and before he came to teach God's knowledge, Solomon reigned as king and applied his heart to know the wisdom and knowledge of this earth. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 12, verses 13, it says, I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. Now that's Solomon talking. That's Solomon saying he walked this earth. And in verse 13, it says, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail has God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. And Solomon knew by wisdom from God, which came from Jesus, that worldly knowledge is fleeting, less than, or whatever you want to call it, to say that it was no competition for God's wisdom and way of doing things. That tree of knowledge was not made for temptation. When God told them they would die, he did not mean an instant physical death, but rather he was speaking about the separation of the spirit of man from God to seek his ways first, which is known as sin, because sin separates us from God. So knowing things on this earth doesn't mean things will be better on this earth, but in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18, it says, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Adam and Eve had grief trying to figure out what to cover themselves, y'all. You read that book and watched that documentary on X, Y, and Z, so now you know something, but the path to solution becomes sorrowful because it is not what you need spiritually to move in this life. This is why putting God's knowledge and wisdom over everything in this earth profits you. He can show you things and place you in situations to watch him work in his knowledge and not your own. That's why he says, lean not unto your own understanding in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. And he goes on before that, it says to trust him with all your heart. Only way you can trust him with all your heart is to be decisive and give it to him and receive the Holy Spirit to be with you. Love him, serve him, and follow his knowledge for you to live this life. Be sure to leave a comment about today's message. If you have a prayer request or questions, please send them to the email provided, and share this if the Holy Spirit leads you to do so. God bless.